Well, they made it official. All 50 states were affected, and I cannot believe that this is happening. How would you feel if the Omicron variant of the COVID-19 actually existed back in March 2020? How has the health crisis affected your life? Millions of lives have been lost, thousands upon thousands of businesses closed down in bankruptcy. Wherever you look, money is hard to get by, and just 3 measly stimulus checks to help us get through the years of pain. Has this all been worth it? Let's start off with October 16, 2014. I know it was a long time ago, but it fits well with the story that I'm about to tell you guys. So back then, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy announced the launch of the US government gain of function to be halted as they had to re-evaluate the potential risks and the benefits of experiments that they were doing. The goal is to understand how a pathogen adapts to different types of environmental pressures. There was mixing and matching of different genetic codes. Sounds safe, right? Well, the funding for this research was paused back then. Now, let's go ahead and fast forward to 2021, when it was found that the NIH, or the group under Dr. Anthony Fauci, was found to be funding it over in Wuhan, China. He said, "I have never lied before Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. I want everyone to understand that if you look at those viruses, that's judged by qualified virologists and evolutionary biologists. It's mostly just Fauci saying that Paul is attacking his integrity." But going back to my initial question, how were our lives changed by this pandemic? And to think that gain of function research was banned here, then they decided to take it to China. How crazy is that? I mean, who had to cut back on food because of the pandemic and kept pushing the government to send out stimulus checks because we just couldn't afford to live normally under the circumstances. By the way, we still need stimulus checks even though the government wants to tell us that the pandemic is over. But here's what I found to be the most surprising and questionable part of this entire scenario. Remember about the new variant that Boston University created, that 80% more deadly than the first variant that we got? It has a mix of the Omicron variant, which is the most transmissible one, and as it turns out, they were already doing the research back in March 2020. How is that possible when the Omicron variant didn't even exist back then? A spokesperson of the Boston Public Health Commission said the approved research protocol was submitted back in March 2020. Well, what else happened back then? We were forced into lockdowns. We had to stop going out because COVID-19 was spreading, not Omicron. How did they already have Omicron when it was spread back in December 2021? I wish the NIH funded us, maybe then we get another stimulus check in our pockets. But again, how are they researching something that didn't even exist yet? It's not healthy for us because we can't even figure out how does it even happen. Also, just to note, back in that time, Dr. Anthony Fauci was facing Congress and lied that they weren't funding gain of function research with all of that information combined. What does the CDC do? Vaccination as a recommended jab for children and adults in 2023. They voted unanimously. All 15 doctors voted yes, and not one person questioned it at all. Although with a great number of people who got sick with the vaccines, is it safe for everyone? And if anything happened to us, can we find them legally? Turns out that no, we can't. Robert Kennedy, the chairman of Children's Health Defense under the Vaccine Act, said, "You cannot sue a vaccine company for an injury, no matter how knowledgeable they are, no matter how reckless they were, no matter how grievous your injury is, you cannot sue them. The only exception to that is if they knew of an injury that is caused by the vaccine and they failed to list it on their manufacturer's insert. Now, if you guys remember, Pfizer recently admitted that they knew that their vaccines couldn't prevent the virus, but they failed to tell us that. So are we in the dark about what else they're not telling us? The taking of the vaccines will still depend on your state. Florida State Health Officer Joseph Ladapo tweeted this before the decisions came from the CDC. Regardless of what at CDC government votes tomorrow on whether COVID-19 vaccination are added to routine child immunizations, nothing changes in Florida. Thanks to Governor Ron DeSantis, COVID mandates are not allowed in Florida, not pushed into schools, and I continue to recommend against them for healthy kids. Again, I understand that some people have reservations about vaccines, and as 100% fine, you are 100% entitled to whatever you think about it and the whole situation with the virus. I remember that Senator Paul also threatened Dr. Anthony Fauci about royalties they may have been receiving when it comes to these vaccines federal. She answered that they have no business knowing if they were receiving anything at all. Paul then said, "Well, if we win in the midterms, you're gonna have to disclose that information." Now think about it. Though we're in the recession pretty much, right? We've received a handful of stimulus check here and there from various different states, even saying that as being generous. So how could the American people react if we were told that Dr. Anthony Fauci, the guy who's making the most money in the government, received money through the procurement of vaccines? On top of that, a virus was being researched using funding from the NIH. I appreciate you guys watching. I wish you great health and better days to come. See you in the next video.